Lasermate. Eject. Operation. Channel intro.
Hello, fellow YouTubers. LightWC Stop Motioner here. Welcome to viewers new and old. And today, I'm doing a ranking revision for Kingdom Wave 1. And the reason I'm doing this is because, well, first off, I got Warpath, because I didn't have him when I did the first ranking video, because I just thought wasn't sure if I wanted to get him at that time. I know, weird. I love him now, but anyway. And also, my opinions on some of the figures has changed over the course of time. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. Okay, so least favorite from this wave hasn't changed. It's still Cheetor. This is one of my least favorite Beast Wars updates in the Kingdom line. I've said just what a disappointment this figure was, because I really like Cheetor as a character, but it just didn't quite live up to what I was hoping for. Even if Cheetah mode, I actually think is really good. The posability is pretty decent. I wish they could have painted pupils on the eyes, that really bugs me, but I do like the expressive mouth, so that's really cool. He's got nice spotted details. You can see the robot kibble, but I'm not really too bummed about that. See, that's the problem. It's like in one of his modes, I really don't have much to complain about. I can't find much to complain about with this transformation either. It's smooth and fun. Yes, there was the issue with the tab, but that's not even a crucial part of the figure. But then we get to the robot mode, and that's where my problems with this guy really start to become apparent. Again, I'm not really going to delve into this too much. I've already talked about why this figure was a disappointment. But first obvious thing, he comes with the wrong gun. They could have made it where the tail turns into a gun very easily, and they didn't. So I just have to do the best I can to make it look something resembling a gun. I still need to get an upgrade kit for him. And then the next thing are the paint apps, which, as I said before, I know they fixed with the Netflix version, but then that one has unpainted shins. It's like, just give us a good Cheetor, Hasbro, please. Like, I could live with the crazy shins. I think that looks fine. I could live with how the cheetah head looks. I even think the head sculpt is pretty decent. Again, it's not perfect, but it's still pretty close. And I think the sculpt is really nice, but just should be more dark blue. There's no gold metallic highlights. There aren't pupils on the eyes. It's seriously, if this figure had the right colors and the right weapon, he probably would be a lot higher. But as it stands, I think the figure is just okay. Okay, so number 6 is Rat Trap, who does have problems, but unlike Cheetor, I can be a little bit more forgiving of it because this is a core class figure. So I think it does a pretty good job for its size, for the most part. This rat mode, it's not perfectly accurate, but I still think it looks pretty good. Weapon storage is terrible. I mean, I think I've seen some people who are able to store it underneath. I might need to look into how they did that. And yes, you can see robot kibble, but what can you expect? I mean, you see it on even some of the Voyagers, so. Now, there isn't really much articulation. I mean, you just got the legs, back legs right here, and that's just if you untab them, they don't tab into place. And then you have the foot articulation. And that's really about it, unless you want to count this, which I don't really count because that breaks the sculpt. So, yeah, it's a decent wrap mode. It's not perfect, but at this scale, I won't really fuss about it too much.
For this scale, I think this is a pretty decent transformation. There's nothing really noteworthy about it, but there's not really anything about it that drives me crazy either.
And I think they did a pretty good job with this robot mode. He does have maximal symbols on his forearm, so that's just such an appreciated touch. I like that head sculpt. I do appreciate the nice silver for kind of the brain area, which is always really weird. And I think the posability is pretty decent, but biggest problems with this guy definitely have to do with the tolerances. And that's where we get into one of the problems that I think could have been avoided even at this scale. Is that these shoulders just don't lock into place at all. So you try to fold it back down and it comes undone, which is a real nuisance, really. It's like you can get him into good poses, but it's a bit of a chore. But I do think his gun is pretty good, and there is a way you can store it on his back here, so that's pretty cool. And he is maybe a little bit too small, but at least he's the smallest. He is supposed to be a small character, so it's not like when they have really big characters and they give them a deluxe or something like that. So, like I said, pretty decent for the size and price range, but again, if he didn't have that shoulder issue, he would probably also be a lot higher. Okay, he does also have the issue with the knees, but that doesn't really bother me as much. So once again, I can push him right here, and it doesn't come undone. So I'm fine with that. So yeah, number 6 is Rat Trap. Alright, now this is a drastic change because in my initial ranking, Black Arachnia was my second favorite. That has really changed quite a bit the more I thought about it. Again, it's still a pretty good figure, but, well, problem is it's one of those cases, like, it looks good and that's about it, unfortunately. Spider Mode I think is decent. I think it looks pretty good. I'm not necessarily a huge spider expert per se. I feel the abdomen looks a little off. And yes, she does have robot kibble, but again, due to the design, I won't really be too upset. They do have the 8 eyes right there, which are painted in red, so that's pretty cool. And you can store her weapon underneath, which is also pretty nice, even if it does feel a little bit like you have to do that just to hold her together. So you can imagine like it shoots off and that's her web. So yeah, you do get the like lots of leg articulation with the spider legs, I guess, so I guess that's pretty cool. But yeah, that's the spider mode.
I don't like the transformation. I know it's due to the design, but that doesn't change the fact that there isn't a single moment where I find it enjoyable.
And for me, this is still where she wins over Cheetor, just because even though I'm way more worried about her longevity than with Cheetor, at least this one does work well as a display piece for robot mode. And I'll give her credit. There's like not really much in the way at all of a backpack. unless you count all these crazy spider legs. But I mean, you can hide those way more if you want. The spider legs are the biggest glaring inaccuracy. They're supposed to be a different color, which, once again, they had the buzzworthy toy accurate version, which had the right colors. But once again, I didn't get that. I was thinking about it initially, but I just wasn't feeling it. I do appreciate the paint on the gun. And I think they did a really good job with that head sculpt. And posability, it's a mixed bag. The head is really good. The shoulders are pretty good. Can't really complain much about that. You do get a rotation there. Elbows can pull off a 90. But legs where you run into the real issue. Again, she can kick forward about that far. That's not very much. So, at the end of the day, this is a figure that looks good, but just as a figure you just want to mess with and play with, or something you want to give to your kids. No, do not give this to your 8-year-old. I don't recommend it for that. But for me, who wants to display these figures in the robot mode, I got very little to complain about with it. So, number 5 is Black Arachnia. Alright, so number 4 is Beast Wars Megatron. Yes, this figure is, once again, it's definitely getting a better ranking than it did initially, because I really warmed up to it. I liked it when I initially got it, but as time went on, I grew to really like it. Now, he does still have some problems, but once again, he does so many things right. I really love this T-Rex mode. He's got a very good heft to him. He has this kind of rubbery material on, which I'm not fully sure how I feel about. I think that T-Rex head is really cool. And they did sculpting in details on the tongue, and got the teeth right there. You do get some tail articulation and the tiny arms. And some leg articulation, which is going to be a little hindered, but oh well. As I said before, this seems to be a lot of people's favorites out of the Beast Wars updates in the Kingdom line, which for me he's definitely one of them, but he's not number 1.
This transformation is a mixed bag. On the one hand, I think it's really an insane and cool transformation, but on the other hand, there's some parts that require way too much force.
But honestly, this robot mode makes the transformation completely feel worth the effort I put in. I really love how it looks. Yes, even the back kibble, I think, doesn't look that bad. And he's fairly stable, I will say. I mean, he might be a little top heavy at times, but if you get him positioned just right, because he's got small heels, but they seem to work pretty well. I think that head sculpt is really nice. It's very expressive. And articulation is pretty good also. Once again, not really too much that I feel he's lacking. Again, I think the sculpted details are really nice, and it's nice that you don't really have to worry about any weapons getting lost, because his weapons are basically a part of him. Really, probably my... Okay, this part right here, the kind of tan peach-ish, there does bother me a little bit, but not too bad. Really biggest nitpick, it would have been kind of nice if maybe you could detach this tail section. That's just me being silly and nitpicky though, so don't really pay any attention to that. Otherwise, great sculpt, great colors, great accuracy to the character. I think he looks really good in both modes, and even if the transformation is a little concerning, I'm okay. I don't really mind because I still think he looks pretty good in both modes. And I've heard that the newest version that's out has like a fixed issue where he's not really prone to breakage anymore. I think that's what I've heard. I'm not fully sure. But if that is true, then now's definitely a good time to go out and get this guy if you haven't yet, because he's amazing. So, number 4 goes to Beast Mode Megatron. Number 3 has to go to Optimus Primal. I still remember when this was first shown off, and I was super stoked. I loved how he looked. I'm just going to take the swords off. Not good weapon storage, but at this size I won't really be too upset. You do have the option to have him on all fours or standing up, and that's just Prime. And I think the Gorilla Mode looks pretty good. Again, the head sculpts, I'll just admit it, I obviously would have preferred the Beast Wars series look, but for a more modernized look, I think this looks okay. He does actually have pupils painted on his eyes, you can see them there. And yes, you can see robot kibble, but once again at this size, I won't really harp on it.
He transforms exactly how Optimus Primal should. No complaints. Perfect transformation.
And I love the look of this robot mode. Once again, I feel like this one is modernized, but not to an uncomfortable level. It still stays faithful to the character, while just adding some details to him. Like he has a lot more fur texture on him than in the original series. Head sculpt, not really any complaints whatsoever, other than maybe a little bit of paint chipping. Just a little bit, not too bad. Nice red eyes that really stand out. As I said before, this is a figure that kind of has a couple little nitpicks that add up. But what he does right, he does it very well. He has both his swords, which made me super happy when I first saw this, because I just thought for sure we were going to see Optimus Primal and there was going to be something that we were going to have to get upgrade kits for. But no, he has every single weapon that I feel he should have. Like I said, I don't care at all about the mace that's not from the Beast Wars series. And that's why they really made that a feature for if you got Paleo Trex. As I've said before, I see a lot of people who prefer the original one. That's fine. I don't really see why, because this one is a way better size. And again, he actually has 2 forearm cannons like he should, whereas the original just has 1, and it flips out and you can't fully close the arm back up. And that just really bothers me. With this one, that's not a concern. So really, probably biggest problem for me with him would just be that the hips and the feet are the wrong color. I wish they were red. And then I wish this sat a little bit more flush in robot mode. But otherwise, I think that really sums up my main nitpicks. Otherwise, I think he still looks really cool in both modes. Transforms exactly how I feel he should. So, yeah, that's definitely enough for me for him to earn number 3. Alright, so now the figure that wasn't in the original ranking. We have Kingdom Warpath. Because, as I said, I wasn't sure if I wanted to get this guy initially, because I was very put off by how they handled the parts forming, and I thought his transformation looked really annoying. I was wrong. I don't really see it as an annoying transformation. To me, it's just more than what you would expect out of a deluxe. But really, I think this tank mode is really nice. You have a fully rotating turret. Can go up and down. Got a nice Autobot symbol there. There is a little bit of paint mismatching, and that's because this is molded plastic, whereas this is painted. So that's a bit of an issue, but otherwise I think it still looks really good. Rolls pretty well, which I don't really care too much about with tanks, because again, it's not like they speed around at high speeds. So I'm like, go up on one side and that kind of thing, but still, I appreciate that he can do that. So it's a very nice tank mode.
It's more complex than I initially thought looking at him, and I don't really have a problem with that. I like it when they make it a little more complex, as long as it's not overdone. Kingdom Rocks.
And I love how this robot mode looks. I think they really nailed it with that head sculpt. I do wish he had blue eyes, and I'm not fully sure why that happened, because I think it's possible they had planned to do light piping and then went against that, but a lot of times when that happens, you can see where they were planning to have it, but you can't really see that on the back of his head, so I'm a little confused by that. I think I've seen some people had an issue where the turret didn't lock in. It's really not that hard, you just push it down once. Once you hear a click, it's not going anywhere. He does have this, which admittedly doesn't really work as much of anything. So, take it or leave it. Now, I unfortunately was a victim of a misassembly error where there's a pin missing from the right arm. But it doesn't ruin the figure for me. And I still think he has really good posability. I'm not really going to cover it here, though. The reason I was doing it with some of the other ones was because I didn't cover it when I first reviewed him. I recently reviewed this guy, and I went ahead and covered the articulation. So, once again, I think he looks good in both modes. The transformation, it's very clever and really crazy. So, I'm glad I was finally able to get this figure. He's really an underappreciated figure of, really, in all honesty, an underappreciated character. So, number 2 is Warpath. Number 1, again, you all saw it coming. I really don't need to go too much into detail about this, but it's Cyclonus. What can I say? He was number 1 of my initial Kingdom Wave 1 ranking video. He's my favorite Transformer of 2021. What can I say? He's amazing. I love how he looks. This jet mode is so cool. It's so smooth and it's so clean underneath. That's a problem with Transformers that turn into jets a lot of times, that you look at it from the top like, it looks pretty good, and you look from the side and like, that's alright. You look underneath and it's just ugly. Not in this case, it looks really cool underneath. And he does have landing gear, which is an appreciated touch. It doesn't roll, but that doesn't matter too much. You can go ahead and collapse it. I really love the shiny purple there. It is so nice. Maybe it's a little bare back here in terms of details, but it doesn't bother me that much. The sculpting is there, just not really a whole lot of paint at all. You do have this section back here. Just, it looks really good from pretty much all sides.
This transformation gets me every time. Collapsing the nose cone is a really satisfying process. And the rest of the transformation is just really fun.
Man, this robot mode is really good. I know a lot of people aren't a fan of the face sculpt because of how the chin looks. And I mean, yeah, I would have preferred it look more G1 accurate, but it doesn't really bother me that much. And he has light piping, which is pretty cool. Again, I know people are... Light piping is a very divisive feature. Some people love it, and some people hate it. Me, it's got some benefits. I think I do still slightly prefer painted eyes, but And that pretty much sums up my issues with this figure. That's, in all honesty, about it. I think the articulation is really good. And the joints are pretty nice and tight, which is something I'm really happy to see carrying over into Legacy. Because all those figures so far seem to have pretty tight joints. He has his gun. And as I said before, it just amazes me how you lift this section up and this part doesn't come undone. That's just, wow. That really amazed me. And yet you don't really have to push super hard to push that section up. That's just really cool. Just so clean once again. I just couldn't really be much happier with this figure. It was a very exciting start to Kingdom. And while there weren't really any figures that I liked quite as much as this guy, there were some that came pretty close. And it was definitely a sign of things to come in the line. And just 2021 in general. I mean, as I said, last year was a really good year for Transformers. So yes, number one, it's still Cyclonus. It's kind of interesting, really, how for this wave, my favorite figures were G1 characters. Because the main thing I was looking forward to with Kingdom was getting Beast Wars updates. But I was kind of expecting this, in all honesty, because the G1 design aesthetic is a lot easier to translate into toy form, which is why I don't know why they're doing robot enhanced design now with G1 designs when we're living in like the peak era of G1 inspired figures. It doesn't make much sense to me. But even if I did have some problems with this wave, mainly the Cheetor, it was still a very solid start, and it got me excited for what did end up being a really good line. So, I'm kind of repeating myself at this point, but I figured I should do a revision for this ranking. I'll probably do one for Wave 5, even if it is only Slammer and Pipes, because in all honesty, I don't really consider Legacy Blaster a repack of the Kingdom one. I consider the Kingdom Blaster a pre-pack of the Legacy one. That's what I think. That's what I say, and that's what I call it. So, that'll really be a non-event. But I've been wanting to do this for a while, so I'm glad to be getting it out now. Now that's just what I think. Let me know what you thought of Kingdom Wave 1. There's figures in this wave I didn't get. I never got around to getting Paleotrex. It's not that I thought the figure looked bad or anything. It looks kind of cool, but I just don't really feel a need for it. Right now anyway, and if I do decide I want to get it, those sold horribly. I can probably still find them in stores and all, really. But as I was saying, if you, whatever you have of Kingdom Wave 1, let me know how you would rank it. And as always, if you like this video, please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and God bless.